Well, good morning. We've had some grandchildren in our house the last few weeks, and so I've got to tell you that we've been desensitized to the noise and the running around. It just seems normal to us. And I've got to say, I don't know what technology they're going to use out there. They may have some electronic technology, maybe a big screen TV. If you're my age, I remember back in the day we had something called a flannel graph. Does anybody remember the flannel graph? And this was some artwork that had been done by some European artists, where everyone in the Bible lands looked like a European, and it had a little bit of felt on the back, some sort of, and then you had a big felt board, and the Sunday school teacher was moving the flannel graph around to tell the story. And today we've got 3 stories that I remember from my flannel graph years of Jacob getting a little rock and putting it down, and then he didn't look like he was asleep. He just went sideways and his head's on there, and then a ladder comes out and there are angels going up and down the ladder. Okay, we have that story today. We have another one about Naaman. He had this terrible skin disease, and he's coming over there, and then he's dipping 7 times into the river, right? Remember that? And then he comes up the last time, we change his flannel graph, and out he comes, and he's cleansed. That's good. And then we've got the one that everyone always loves, this really violent one, Nebuchadnezzar, and the fiery furnace, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego being thrown into the fiery furnace. And then there's a mysterious character. Who is that other person in there? And we've got all that flannel graph in our mind. I do not have flannel graph today, but I will read the scriptures that these stories come from. We're looking at 3 case studies, and each one of these case studies, we're going to select some of the teaching that's in there. We won't cover everything about each case study, but we're going to look at some of the teaching that's in that space about who our God is. And I hope we can all grasp in a bigger way today something of God's glory. We're going to start with Genesis 28, and I'll be reading verses 10 to 17 to give you a little background. Jacob, who my name James comes from Jacob, it's the anglicized version of Jacob, and I was really excited about finding the meaning of my name, and then I found out, and I didn't like it so much. It means somebody who takes somebody else's stuff. And I didn't really like that too much. And he was called that because he was running around taking his brother's stuff off him, like the birthright and all that kind of stuff. And he has to flee. His mother says, "Get out of Dodge. It doesn't look good for you. You need to go to my family and wait until things cool down here." And so he heads off back. And he was in a state of extreme distress. Have you in the last year been in a state of extreme distress? I have. I heard some news from my family, some family members that put me into extreme distress about something they had gone through, and it broke my heart. And I had no words. I had no thoughts. I can't even think of what to do except be angry and upset. Extreme distress. And you know what? God gave Jacob a dream. Let's read about that. Jacob left Beersheba and went down toward Haran, came to a certain place and stayed there that night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised to you. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. Wow, pretty amazing story. Here's this patriarch, a person who's going to be a father of many, who has no children at this time, no wife, and is running away from his brother and a situation at home, and is in tremendous distress. And God chooses this time and place to put this promise out into this man's life. That's when God spoke to him, when he was in that space of distress. Does God sometimes have to talk to us when we're in a place where we'll listen? Oh, I got this covered. I know this one. I can do this. As long as we're like that, well, we may not be able to do it. I remember the story of a fisherman. We have a few fishermen and fisherwomen in this room, I imagine. Might have been out on the boat this week. I know some are going out in a boat in a couple weeks. But I know a guy who was out in a boat who was a professional fisherman. And Jesus taught him a lesson about fishing. And when Peter pulled so many fish onto the boat that the boat almost sank, he said, Get away from me, for I am a sinful man. He knew who he was. He knew that while he thought he could fish, he can't fish. And what are we? Do we know where we're at? Are we good at what we do? I'm pretty good milking those cows. I think I know what I'm doing. I'm pretty good restocking those groceries to the New World. That's what I'm doing. I get it out of those boxes quick. Well, sure, that's fine. But when we end up in a place of extreme distress, that's where we can hear God speak clearly into our hearts those words of comfort. Did you hear the words of comfort in that passage? Look at that. Comfort. I'll bring you back. I'll be with you. The stuff that Jacob needed to hear, he heard. We're going to be talking about geography today, and next week we're going to talk about some geography as well. geography isn't just the physical. We're in Waihi. You can find this place on your GPS. But we have a spiritual GPS as well. Where are we spiritually as well as physically? And do you know what? God can come to that place where we are spiritually. In need of him, he can reach into that place. The word God gave to Jacob was, I will be with you wherever you go. Has anybody said that to us? Behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Let's receive that, brothers and sisters. Let's go now to Naaman, 2 Kings 5. Naaman, the backstory to Naaman is, he's an amazing commander. He's skilled at what he does. He probably didn't need God. He's in Syria. He doesn't know the God of the Israelites, except that in his household, his wife has a slave that had been captured in battle over against the Israelites. And this slave girl, when she sees that her master, Naaman, has this terrible skin disease, says, no, it's a shame he's not over there in Samaria, because if he was, God's prophet could heal him. Jesus mentions that, it's kind of and when Naaman gets this, he thinks, oh, I'll do that. I'll go over there. And so some of us know the details of the story. It's a great story. You should read it this afternoon if you get a chance. 2 Kings 5. He has a nationalistic idea of the gods there around him couldn't fix him. Maybe I'll go try this God over there, and maybe he'll be able to do something. When we lived in Afghanistan, we would go to see people who were sick, and they'd say, oh, but I went to this doctor. His medicine wasn't that good. So I went to another doctor, and his medicine was strong. So they would tell us stories like that. And that is a human trait, isn't it? I'm going to try this thing, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to try that thing, because we're seeing here a case where we saw emotional distress. We're seeing the physical ailment, the leprosy on the skin. Now, I got news for every single person in this room that somehow, I don't know when the switch goes on, but for me, it was around 66 years old, I started getting leprosy all over my body. And I got this thing growing, and I got that thing growing. And my daughter, who's a medical doctor, when she was doing a rotation in what's it called, dermatology, she would grab my arm and look like that, and she said, no, that's okay. And we know in this country, everybody's going in to get something cut off their ear or half their nose chopped off or what like that. We know all about that in this country, right? All these farmers and truck drivers and stuff. It's pretty hard going, isn't it? The melanoma, we have the highest melanoma rate. So we're a nation of Naamans here. But you try this, you try that. That's why we're slapping all this. We had a granddaughter who got into the yogurt, and she was putting yogurt on her legs because she thought it was the sunscreen. And that's what we do. Naaman comes, and this is a little bit of the story. I'm going to start in verse 9. When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, because the king of Israel doesn't He's upset with Naaman coming and asking to be healed. He sent to the king, "Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come now to me, that he may know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and stood at the door of Elisha's house, and Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean." Elisha didn't even come out of the house. He sent a message. That was very dishonoring to Naaman. Naaman was angry, and he went away saying, "Behold, I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and cure the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?" So he turned away in rage. But his servants came near to him and said to him, "My father, it is a great word the prophet has spoken to you. Will you not do it? Has he actually said to you, 'Wash and be clean'?" So he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God, and the flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child. He was cleaned. Well, a lot of us would like to go down to the Waikato and dip 7 times, and then we wouldn't have to go get all that stuff burned off. But it doesn't necessarily work like that every time, does it? Then he returned to the man of God and all of his company, and he stood before him and he said, "Behold, I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel." He got healed of more than his skin problem. His skin problem actually was kind of cosmetic. The healing that he really needed was in his heart, and he needed to know that there is only one God in all the earth. And he got the point. He figured it out. Praise God. So accept now a present from your servant. But he said, "As the Lord lives before whom I stand, I will receive none." The prophet didn't want a present, and he urged him to take it, but he refused. Then Naaman said, "If not, please let there be given to your servant 2 mule loads of earth. For from now on your servant will not offer burnt offerings or sacrifice to any god but the Lord. In this manner may the Lord pardon your servant when my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, leaning on my arm, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon. When I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon your servant in this matter." He said to him, "Go in peace." It's amazing stuff. This guy, Naaman, becomes a follower of Yahweh. Through this healing, he becomes a follower of Yahweh. And you know what he's doing? He's taking the dirt from Israel back to Syria. Now, why is he taking the dirt? He gets 2 donkey loads of dirt. That's quite a bit. Because it's believed in those times that that place is where the God dwells. And so I'm taking a souvenir of dirt from Israel back with me to Syria so I can put it down, and when I worship that God and get down on that ground, that's the very ground that God revealed himself to me in. That's pretty dramatic stuff, guys. That's real conversion stuff going on there. No, we made that. You don't really have to take the dirt. That's okay. Because the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. But Naaman was working out of his own understanding, and he wanted those 2 donkey loads of dirt. And he wanted another thing. He asked permission. When his master, the king, went into his temple to worship, and he had to kneel down because his master was kneeling, will you please pardon me for having to do that? Look, dude, my heart's not in that. My heart's not in that. But I work for this man. And when he bows down and I have to bow down next to him, would you pardon me? What's the prophet say? Go in peace. Go in peace, because this is what we know. This is what we know. That the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. And even that ground that they're bowing down to that idol in is the Lord's. All is the Lord's. Amazing story. Again, we're getting this idea of geography. There's a geography going on. And geographically, we're taking some of that dirt over to Syria to try to make a transfer. But we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. Our third story is the Hebrew children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And we know their story a little bit, I think. It comes from Daniel chapter 3. And when you read it in Daniel, you get an opportunity to read about the different sound of the horn and pipe and lyre and all that stuff. And that gets repeated over and over again. We're not going to go into all that. But I tell you what we will do is we will take a look here at what happened. The backstory is this. Some of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, some of his cronies think it's a good idea that he makes an idol for everyone to worship when they hear all these instruments go off, because they know the Jewish people won't do that. They're not going to bow down, and they don't like the Jews. So they want to make a system that's not going to be pleasant for the Jews. And so that's what happens when the idol is built and the sounds of these different instruments go off. These 2 guys, and I remember it from my Sunday school days, thousands of people bowing down and these 3 dudes standing up. I had a friend who was at in Pakistan at a Muslim convention that had probably 100,000 people at it. And he was there doing research on Islam, and it's a missionary movement, about 100,000 people, that's all, in this big wide open area, and he heard the call to prayer. And he went, uh-oh, in a few minutes, 100,000 people are going to be bowing down except for one person. And he had to get out of there fast, because he didn't think it would be a very wise thing for him to be standing up in the middle of that crowd. Nebuchadnezzar is what we might call OTT. We don't say that where I'm from, OTT. Maybe it's because we're so OTT over there. But over the top. Nebuchadnezzar was over the top about everything. And he said, let's fire up the fire hotter than hot. And it was so hot that the people that were throwing these 3 Hebrew children in, they got burned. See, it destroyed them. And the Hebrew children go in, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I'll start in verse 24 of chapter 3 of Daniel. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" They answered and said to the king, "True, O king." He answered and said, "But I see 4 men unbound walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." I love this stuff. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the burning fiery furnace. He declared, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire, and the satraps and prefects and governors and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not any power over the bodies of those men. Now, these men, before they went into the fire, they had told the king, "Look, God is able to save us, but if he doesn't, we're still not bowing down," right? They knew their 10 commandments. Okay, "I am the Lord your God who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. You shall have no other God before me. You will not bow down to great." They knew their 10 commandments, right? So they weren't having anything of it. We don't care. If we don't get saved, it doesn't matter. We're not bowing down. So we've seen emotional distress. We've seen healing, physical healing, and now we see tremendous persecution. This is the persecution that everybody holds out as the toughest one. Well, we'll just kill you. That's the tough one, isn't it? We'll just kill you. We'll throw you into a fiery furnace. You see what's happening there? We have another case of this extreme thing going on. Now, maybe some locals would think, maybe back in Israel, your God will save you because you're in his territory. But we're over here in Babylon. We're over here in Babylon, you see, and so different rules apply over here. Nuh-uh. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, right? And in Babylon, one like the Son of God was in the fiery furnace with those 3 men. He went through that with them. Brothers and sisters, I would argue he's been through that for us, each one. Let's not forget these childhood Bible stories, eh? Amazing stuff. We learn them so that in our lives, when we have our complicated systems, in our complicated world, we learn how to navigate that. Because not only in space, but in time, it's the same God that was with those children who is with us today. It's the same God. And I don't care what you're going through. I'm sorry. It could be a fiery furnace. It may feel terrible. You may be in some sort of persecution that I have no idea what's going on. But our brothers and sisters who are going through persecution this day, there'll be Christians today losing their lives because they gathered to follow Jesus Christ. That will happen today. While we sit in this room with the freedom to worship as we please. Thank God for this country, eh? Thank God for this place. So I go back to that verse that we read before, and I'll read a section of it again. Psalm 139. Let's start with verse 7. Where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, that's the place of the dead, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me. Your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as the day, for darkness is as light with you.